Rolling Stone said of The Stranger that Billy Joel's schmaltz occupies a stylistic no man's land, where lyrical and musical truisms are forced together. Billy Joel's The Stranger melds the sweeping anthems of the Turnstiles album with a more soulful gospel atmosphere, with scenes from an Italian restaurant, which is very much a homage to the Abbey Road suite. But it has to be said The Stranger is more Broadway than Beatlesy, I think. It's one that flits from various different styles and tones, from the jazz lounge Just the Way You Are to that rebellious paean to Forbidden Love, Only the Good Die Young, to that Springsteen-esque ode to escape, Moving Out Anthony song, all topped off with the hushed gospel of Everybody Has a Dream. According to Billy Joel's biographer Fred Schruers, it was October 1963, at age 14, that Billy got a real taste of what soul music was about when he went to see James Brown play the Apollo. Joel said of that experience that his footwork alone was amazing, but that great soulful rasp and all that ferocity mixed with the precision of the band and the unabashed showmanship of the man made an indelible impression on me. Billy Joel, of course, cut his teeth as a session musician. It's believed that he played on the Shangri-La's Leader of the Pack.
Is she really going out with him?
Well, there she is. Let's ask her.
Betty, is that Jimmy's ring you're wearing?
As well as being Chubby Checker's piano player. Chubby Checker, of course, who scored that wonderful hit, The Twist, which was a reworking of the Hank Ballard original. He later joined the Hassles, of course, whose album, I think Hour of the Wolf, I think they did more than one album, but that one had a particularly psychedelic tinged cover. That came out in 1969. Then there was Attila, which according to Billy Joel was so loud it made people's ears bleed. Attila was named after the actor Jack Palance, who played Attila the Hun in the 1954 Douglas Sirk film Sign of the Pagan. Joel's first album, Cold Spring Harbor, was a bit of a botched job, really. It was produced by his then manager, Artie Ripp. A bit of a hash made of it. His subsequent albums, called Piano Man and Street Love Serenade, although the former has its fans. Many people were quite harsh regarding Street Life Serenade, including Joel himself. But of course, in New York, 1975, is that seismic moment when he made the Turnstiles album, an album that Village Voice critic Robert Christgau described as obnoxious. Liberty DeVito's wonderful biography, Life, Billy and the Pursuit of Happiness, it goes on to describe what I consider to be a seismic moment in Billy Joel's career. If I may quote, Phil Ramone turned up in 1977 at the Carnegie Hall show in New York City. Phil said he liked us and felt a lot of uncontrolled energy and raw street sound in the band. He said he didn't want to change it, but he felt he would be the person to get it under control. Phil Ramone, of course, was a famed engineer who'd worked on Art Garfunkel's Breakaway album, of course, more famously Paul Simon's Still Crazy After All These Years. It was even said that he was the sound guy at Madison Square Gardens when Marilyn Monroe sang Happy Birthday to JFK. It was Ramone, of course, who convinced Joel to streamline the arrangements for The Stranger, moving away from what I call those sweeping anthems of the Turnstiles album, something that was more, dare I say it, radio-friendly perhaps. Ushering Joel towards what seems to be a series of vignettes, New York-themed little snapshots, perhaps inspired by the Springsteen's fables of working-class life. And they do provide The Stranger with the feel of a concept album in many respects, although I'd argue that there doesn't seem to be any real true thematic connection between these songs. I mean, certain themes are explored, relationship breakdowns, marriage, growing old, themes of failure, all set within the thematic context that is New York City. Interestingly, Slant Magazine described The Stranger as a concept album of sorts, and I'm quoting, it's an ode to the singer's native New York, underscored by his paranoid obsession and resistance to change. They go on to call the album a rejection of the American dream, highlighting the pessimism expressed in some of the lyrics. But I disagree. I don't think this is in any way a concept album. It's a loosely themed album at best. Joel made The Stranger with his road band, the band that he showcased on the Turnstiles album. In fact, he was so proud of his band that he, later on, about 1980, he released Songs in the Attic, which was showcasing his pre-Stranger material with his current live band. It was about this time, probably after the Turnstiles album, that George Martin expressed an interest in producing Billy Joel, but he wanted him to use session musicians rather than his band. Joel, to his credit, said, "Take me, take my band." Eventually they settled on Ramone, of course, who actually liked the raw energy of his live band and wanted to see that translated to the studio. In fact, it was baffling for some critics who went to see Billy Joel's magnetic live performances how he wasn't bigger than he actually was by this time. In fact, in 1977, the Los Angeles Times said, "A common question about the 27-year-old New Yorker is why such a scintillating performer hasn't become a star." And the tone of the album was the very opposite of the disco dance craze that was sweeping across America at the time, seizing the hearts, minds and trousers of a generation. In fact, Billy Joel says, "I certainly didn't want to be part of that disco demi-monde that was getting all the buzz in New York during this period. I hated that whole coked-out, disco-drenched New York club scene in the late 70s. One of the highlights on this album is, of course, the epic scenes from an Italian restaurant. That and Vienna, I think, and two interesting songs when they're placed side by side. One seems to be a big conceptual piece and the other is a more concise reflection. During The Stranger, of course, the relationship breakdown with Billy's wife is very much at the fore of the writing here. A lot of the songs seem to be exploring the tensions between in a relationship when the relationship goes bad. To quote Joel again, he said, "When a relationship goes south, you just sit back and let it happen, hoping maybe it'll get better." His miserable experiences then with his wife was a source of great creativity, I think, in terms of the writing for this record. Interestingly, Joel is often accused of misogyny, people citing the lyrics in She's Only a Woman, and as well as the Stiletto song. Now, Stiletto, which eventually wound up on 52nd Street a few years later, was actually written during the Stranger sessions. And the album cover is quite Freudian in itself, with a fully suited Billy Joel barefooted laying on an unmade bed. But there's a lot of symbolism, not just in the album artwork, but also in a lot of the lyrics, especially in The Stranger, which is very much inspired by the fraying relationship between him and his wife. Joel asks directly, "Why were you so surprised that you never saw the stranger? Did you ever let your lover see the stranger in yourself?" It's quite a stabbing lyric, really, and quite a stabbing song, which is very much at odds with the last song on the album, Everybody Has a Dream, which feels like a bit of a band-aid in some respects in its hushed, conciliatory tones. Interesting, while we're talking about the cover, the back cover was shot at the Marconi factory in downtown Manhattan, which was a mom-and-pop Italian restaurant. Now, if I may, I'd like to talk about some of the songs on this album. The first one, of course, is the wonderful Moving Out. It's a thrilling opening to this number with the bass and the piano really picking up the groove of this song that seems to be very much a vignette of working class life and explores that middle class ambition of moving to the suburbs. The ack, ack, ack refrain is supposed to represent the sound of an engine as Anthony, of course, moves out. The actual sound of the engine used in this song was a recording of Doug Stugmeyer's Corvette. But this song, very much being seen as tapping into that working class desire to escape, has caused many to see it as Springsteen-esque. Liberty DeVito said of this song, "Billy had played me Moving Out, and I thought to myself, the melody sounds very familiar. When he finished, I realised what it was. I said, 'You schmuck, that's a Neil Sedaka song.' He was using the melody from Laughing in the Rain." But eventually we got to the end of it all, and I suggested that what is needed here is a piano piece, very similar perhaps to the piano piece that ends Layla by Derek and the Dominoes. And Billy went off and wrote the instrumental ending. Just the Way You Are was a huge hit, although Graham Goldman of 10cc believes Billy Joel owes him a production credit on this one. But among the most famous songs to emerge from this period, this song, interestingly, almost never made it on the album. They were already playing this on the Turnstiles tour, and I think the band hated it. Billy Joel felt it was too mushy, too schmaltzy. But actually, it was Linda Ronstadt who said that not only is this song a huge hit, if you include this on the album, women will love it. You'll have all the women you want. Naturally, it went on the album. What is interesting about this song is what Joel calls an undercurrent of darkness, and that there always has to be that tension for a love song to work. He explains that there's an element of that anxiety in the bridge of the song. What will it take till you believe in me the way that I believe in you? Scenes from an Italian restaurant. Joel here tells the wonderful ordinary tale of Brenda and Eddie. It's a song that's pieced together by a series of fragments that Billy Joel already had written. And the music tells a wonderful story. It's that carnivalesque swirl of the accordion, the saxophone, tuba. And the song is at its most jubilant when it's talking about the Brenda and Eddie's past. Billy Joel said it was a song where I wanted to explore those anointed kids at college and kind of wondered how their lives might have turned out. Vienna is a beautiful song of dwindling hope in some respects. It's built on a lilting piano melody, whereas disenchantment lurks in the subtext of scenes from an Italian restaurant. Vienna is straightforwardly melancholic, ironically making it the Stranger's most empathetic and heartwarming number, I think. And this song pairs aspiration with disappointment with a melody that's quite maudlin. And of course, like the title, it has a very European, almost cabaret feel to it. Joel looks to diagnose humanity on Vienna, something he does across a stranger, while still mostly writing about familiar things or people. The Stranger is an interesting title track where he looks at this facade that we enact in order to survive the rough and tumble of the world. You know, we change our personalities for different settings. We all have a face that we hide away forever. But he talks about, he uses the analogy of these different personas that we employ as masks. Some are silk, some are satin, some are steel, and some are leather, or words to that effect. Interestingly, one critic has said that I can't think of many people who categorise their moods by fabric. In the end, Joel seems to be searching for meaning or trying to look for the true self behind the facade. As Lady Macbeth advises Macbeth, present like the flower, but be the serpent beneath it. The whistling section of the song was very much inspired by Sinatra. Billy Joel imagined a kind of a street lamp scene, a foggy night of him wearing a pork pie hat and a trench coat. She's Always a Woman is one of the most ornate songs on this album, and the beauty of the music conflicting slightly with the spleen of the lyrics. Everybody Has a Dream. Joel beautifully employs it, almost like a preacher's soulful rasp on this one. The true dream is for love and for a quiet home life. Only the Good Die Young is described as anti-Catholic and pro-lust. It was obviously it's a contentious song that was banned by the Catholic diocese. Interestingly, Only the Good Die Young started off as a reggae number, and the band hated it. It was actually Paul Simon, when he visited the studio, he pointed out that the lyrics were quite dark, but if you make the music light, then it will just go over most people's heads. And typical really here of Simon's genius as a songwriter, he perfectly understands that the weightiness of the lyrics are kind of served by making the music a little bit frothy. Interestingly, Liberty DeVito said the drum fill in Only the Good Die Young is actually borrowed from Mitch Mitchell and the Jimi Hendrix number Up from the Skies. The Stranger was a wonderful album that came just at the right time for Joel, who was pretty much would have probably been dropped from the Columbia label had The Stranger not been a massive hit. Many say that this is his best album. It's hard to disagree with that really, but on any given day it fluctuates for me between that and the wonderful jazz-tinged 52nd Street. I know you've been watching a review by Classic Album Review. If you like this, please do share it, click like, subscribe, check that notification bell, and more importantly, I hope you're well, staying safe, and you keep listening.